Welcome to the Self-Care for the Creative podcast, where we talk about self-care strategies for creatives, empaths, and highly sensitive people. I'm your host, Stephanie Frizel, aka Dylan. I'm an artist, a songwriter, and an author. And today I have a very special guest, and we talk all things self-care along the creative journey. I'm so glad you're here. 'Cause I know I'm ready. Jenna Andrews is a creative powerhouse who plays a multitude of roles as a songwriter, producer, executive, and entrepreneur. She's co-written hit songs such as BTS's Billboard Hot 100 #1, Butter, as well as Benny's global smash, Super Lonely. Based in Nashville and Los Angeles, Jenna is also the creator and host of The Green Room Talks, a podcast where she explores the intersection between creativity and mental health, engaging her guests in candid, eye-opening, honest conversations. Jenna has also been in the music publishing game and recently launched a joint venture with Warner Chappell Music called Genesis Music Publishing. Please welcome Jenna.
Hey.
There she is.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm happy we finally did this.
I know, me too. I was like, it might take a second, but we're going to get there. I promise. We're going to get there. Yeah. So are you in Nashville now, or you're like back and forth, right? Like Nashville and
I'm back and forth. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Maybe you could just introduce yourself to our listener and tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Obviously, you already said my name, so
yeah.
We got that part clear. Obviously, I started as an artist, and I, transitioned into a songwriter, and have had some pretty cool songs over the years. Super Lonely, Butter, BTS, Permission to Dance, Heartbreak Anthem, Little Mix. I did 5 years at Records and Art Consulting, signed like Lynn and Stella, Noah Cyrus, and then I have more recently, I guess during COVID, started a mental health podcast for creatives called The Green Room Talks, which has been cool because I think that, like, as a songwriter yourself, you get that, like, in most rooms, especially with female artists, it ends up coming out. I think for guys, it's, I get it. Like, it's harder to be vulnerable or talk about things that are going on. But I mean, equally so for different reasons. I think it's a really cool way to have a conversation about real things. And truthfully, a lot of the best songs that I'm sure you've written and I've written come out of a place of vulnerability. So
totally. Yeah. I definitely wanted to showcase and highlight your podcast because, you've mentioned before, like just on little clips here and there on social media that you've, had, definitely struggled with anxiety and, being bullied and things like that. So I was wondering maybe you could speak to a little bit about some of the struggles that you've had to face and if that's why you started the podcast,
Well, no, I mean, it definitely is. I think that for me, I started the podcast really because I found, like what I just said, I found that it was such a relatable topic within writing sessions, and it was so healing in writing songs and what we do to be able to actually be honest about who you are and what you've gone through rather than, feel like you have to constantly keep up a facade, which has been really cool because it can be hard to come into, especially when you're writing with new people and you're going through things, to be able to feel like you have the outlet and that they will accept it and not maybe turn those things against you in a way that is scary, So I think when you find those people that you can talk to, it's really special. But yeah, I mean, like for me as an artist, I have definitely felt like, dealt with anxiety and all those type of things. And I think as a kid, you don't really recognize what it is. And as you become an adult, you realize that these are real, this is a real sickness. It's not something people obviously these days, I think it's gotten a lot better, but I don't think people recognize the kind of sickness that anxiety is. Like, if you have a real job, it's, if you have a panic attack or something happens and you ask to be excused from a meeting, it's, especially for a female, it can be regarded as weakness. Right. And I think that's really hard to navigate in our industry too, because, if you're a performer, for example, and you start to, have an anxiety attack before going on stage, it's like, what are you going to do? Right. So these kind of things are really important to talk about. And for me, it was one of the reasons why I actually stopped wanting to tour, because it was just felt so debilitating for me. And coming into songwriting, I felt like like I said, it was an outlet rather than like a disability, for example. Right. So I wanted to turn it into something positive. And, and just, dealing with bullying and just kind of like, over the years being objectified in the industry as an artist and things like that it's kind of a tough thing, because I try to like walk the line of not being like, woe is me, or I'm a female, or like I'm a victim. Like, it's not really that. It's just internal struggle that is just more embarrassing to talk about than anything. Right. Totally. It's like, I don't want to tell you because I feel like it's that sense of really not wanting to be judged. And again, a lot of times too, for me over the years, it's been things where it's just actually stopped me from taking opportunities. Right. It's like, I literally have something going on and actually have it affect my life in a way that's not good. And I think that it's to be able to have this now, and obviously just practice that in life as well, and just learn to be honest and try to, trust as many people as you can. It's hard, right? Because you can be let down, but trust is a beautiful thing. So even if you do take that risk and you're let down, I always still have the mindset that I'd rather try to be honest than repress my feelings forever.
Right, so. Exactly. Was there like a point in time in your life where you realized that you had anxiety and it was more of, sort of like a medical thing? Like when did that sort of start for you?
I think when it really first started was the first year of being signed to Def Jam. I had my first panic attack. And of course, for anybody that's had panic attacks, it's like, now it's different because I understand what the symptoms are and how to control it. But I think in the first time, it really does feel like you're dying.
You're dying.
Like,
yeah,
it's
I
like
am dying.
Your throat closes. Or feels like it's closing. Your heart is beating like 100 miles a minute. It's like you just feel, shaky, uncontrolled. You can't control really like your body. And anyway, so those things were happening. I ended up passing out in West Hollywood, and I literally thought I was dying. So I called an ambulance, went to the hospital, and the doctor, of course, was like, "Well, this is a panic attack."
Yeah.
And diagnosed me. I think it was like called like Cipralex or whatever. It's just kind of helps you calm down or whatever it was. But it was crazy to have experienced that because, obviously I've never had a panic attack before, but to have dealt with so many things related to anxiety before that, and then have this kind of come to a head really made me recognize that it was something that was really like holding me back in some ways.
Right. So once you realized, okay, cool, I have anxiety, it's a thing, it's common. How did you learn to sort of manage the symptoms and know how to deal with like the next panic attack?
No, that's a good question. I mean, my dad is a professor in education psychology, so that came in handy in the sense that like when I first had my panic attack, he was very like calm about it and sort of tried to like divert the attention into something else, where I was at the time like, I'm dying. Why are you not acknowledging that? But instead he'd be like, what'd you have for lunch today? Like things like that. Right. And it really does work, because now when I have panic attacks, those are exactly the things I do, where it's like, I tell my brain, like, this is a panic attack. I'm not dying. This is not physical. This is mental. So as much as you do that, and then you train yourself to be like, okay, what else can I do? Like, kind of try to figure out another activity that you can do, or sort of stop what you're doing. My thing has been really scary for driving. Like I actually still haven't gotten my license, but like I drove and then I stopped driving when I lived in New York. One, because obviously, you don't need to as much. Mm-hmm. Two, because the panic attacks were so bad when I did drive. That's where it is scary, because even if you're controlling your mental, if you're on a highway,
right,
it's like, and your legs stop feeling like they're functioning, it's like, you don't want to take the risk to get in an accident or whatever. So actually die.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I've really been able to cope with it in every other way. So I'm hoping now I'm going to get back on the horse, whatever people say, and like get my license. But I think that it's like, you have to, it takes time. I mean, they were really bad. I had probably 5 that were really bad. And I think after each one of those, like they've gotten better every time. And I haven't had like a massive one in years, but every time I do feel them coming on, those are sort of the mental tricks that help me.
So you mentioned that at the time, like you were signed to Def Jam, and that was when you had your first one. And I think I've told you this before, but Brian had really crazy panic attacks as well. And for him, his like were an onset of like a crazy like life moment, a transitional moment. It was always like big moments that were occurring at the time that like triggered all of the panic attacks. So I wonder if maybe that was like part of it, or can you speak to like as to why you think looking back, maybe you had them then?
Yeah, it's actually, that's so true. It really is about big moments in your life, good or bad, but because of all the repressed feelings and emotions that you had, like you've had up to that point, what I've learned from what causes panic attacks, it's not necessarily what is happening in the moment. It's all those, like, so you could have like a really scary thing happen and be fine in your head, but like the next day going to get a regular coffee, totally chill, no stress, and the panic attack hits.
Right.
So it's not really like necessarily in that exact moment that I've felt it. And I have obviously talked to doctors and whatnot, and that's pretty common. Like these feelings sort of stay within you and they just come. That's what makes panic attacks scary, because like you would think that when the moment that's actually scary, or like whether it be bad or good, or a good thing happens to you and you're overwhelmed with emotion, you'd think that that's when it hits, right? But like, no, it really just hits kind of whenever. It's like,
I'm here.
Got you.
Yeah, I'm here now. Cancel all your plans. Yeah, totally.
Literally.
Yeah, cancel every single plan. You are now you're
allowed
cocooning for the rest of the day and crying under a blanket.
Literally.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about like being a woman in the music industry. I'm sure we could talk for days about this, but how it is an interesting challenge to walk this very fine line of like not take the perspective of like woe is me, but it's clear that we have a different set of challenges and a different set of rules for us as women in music. And I was wondering if you could maybe just speak to what your experience has been as a woman in music.
I think it's been different. I think, I've kind of played a lot of parts, whether it be being an artist, songwriter, A&R person, and all those ways in being a woman have been different and taught me different things. I think for an artist perspective, it's like we're taught to, look young, be pretty, like all these things. Like, and it's even if you're not pretty, it's like, what's your look? It's so objectified based. And then also behavior is a big thing. It's like, oh, stay on your P's and Q's, right? Like, which is another thing that is crazy when it comes down to like, having these anxiety issues, because, if you are in the same way as in the workforce, I'm sure, I guess it sort of relates back to an artist too, because, if you were to be like, oh, to your A&R person, I don't know, I'm just not able to do this writing trip, or I can't go on this tour because of anxiety. Like again, I think people are starting to recognize it's a real thing and we've grown. But when I was doing it, I feel like that I wouldn't have been able to do that. Right. And I think that's really scary. So it's like, oh, suck it up. So I would take shots and do things that weren't healthy for me to be able to cope with the pressure.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And then as an executive, I think it's similar, but kind of heightened, but the difference is, I think, as an executive woman, it's like the feminine qualities that make women amazing are the parts that sort of have to get stripped from you in order to be taken seriously as an executive. Like, I think you almost have to talk like a man, act like a man, all these things, which I think shouldn't be the case. Because I think the things that a woman brings to the table, especially working with artists, is like something so different and special and so much, there's maternal sense, right? Yes. Like it's like a very
caring
and empathetic sort of way of being. And I think that's great. I think that's what makes the dynamic of having a man and a woman great. Like there's a reason why we're men and women, right? And I think that that's sad in terms of that sense, because it's like, kind of feeling like you have to
play the man's game,
be yourself, not be yourself. Which is crazy. And I think as a songwriter, to be honest, it's interesting because I think you have to, and I think it's in our own heads too, as a woman, you've probably experienced this, but like, I think you think, oh, what should I wear to this session today? How should I, be? Because it's like, you don't want another girl to not like you, or like, I think it's natural for all girls to be, it's like a thing that we have that isn't necessarily real, because once those barriers get broken down, none of us care. We just want to be liked and like have a real bond. That's all that humans really care about. But I think on the surface, we're so nervous that like, what is this going to be? Or like for a guy, if we're too nice, are we flirty?
Right, exactly.
So it's kind of like, do I be and then if you're a bitch, are you cutting off your creative
opportunities?
Like,
right.
Or not even, is the song going to be as good? Because
right.
you're not able to like really be free to speak exactly what you want to speak, because the whole time you're like sort of rigid.
Right.
And so I've learned to really just try to be myself as much as possible and sort of be aware of my boundaries in that sense.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I could totally relate. And I'm sure many other women coming up in the industry definitely relate. And it's like, there's always that line of like, okay, do I come off a certain way? Do I not come off a certain way? Are they actually interested in me and my talent? Or do they have ulterior motives? Like there's so many, there's so many other situations where it's just like, okay, yeah, looking back on like every time that I thought was like a real opportunity, there was definitely situations where it was just like, wow, that person really was not at all. And it's heartbreaking. Like, you're like, wait, you weren't actually like taking me seriously.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. So that's definitely just something that like dudes don't have to worry about whatsoever. And really watch out for ourselves, like, because there's no HR,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I feel like within obviously these conversations and all the things that are, supporting mental health, I think that's pushing towards something. It's not specific HR, but I think at least there's somewhere that creative people can go to talk about these things. So
exactly. So when you started the Green Room talks, what was your, vision and ultimate goal? And I know you're still doing them, which is awesome. So I'll definitely include your podcast in the show notes on this episode as well, so people can definitely check it out. Tell us a little more about the podcast and who you've had on and little topics and stuff that you guys cover.
I think really my goal has been what we've talked about so far in this. It's just being able to like, encourage honesty and vulnerability and, just awareness of the issues, and not feeling like that's going to hold you back. If anything, it will propel you forward to be able to be your truest self within these sessions you're doing, and also within just you as a person in general, just walking in your truth, I guess, right? Like to me, it's cathartic in doing the podcast. And I know that people that have come on have felt a similar way. And I think it's just, it feels like such a positive, inspiring thing in my life to be able to feel free and able to talk. I love it. I love talking things through.
Yeah.
So that's been a major goal. And then also, there's a lot of time, like even just baby steps, obviously growing the podcast. I've just had a lot of people message me and just be like, oh my gosh, like this is really inspired me to want to talk about what I'm going through, for people that haven't ever even thought about it or been fearful in the past. So I think in that sense, even if you're changing 5 people's lives, it's still worth it. You know what I mean? It's not about it's not a popularity contest in that sense. It's really just like to do it because it feels right. And it's like a passion project for me, in that sense. It's not about any particular numbers at a particular time. It's more so like really about just having it impact people. So that's really been the point. And beyond that, obviously who I've had on, I mean, Tegan and Sarah, I've had Upsall, Blue Tiger, Lennon Stella, I'm trying to think of it, Mickey Guyton, Dixie D'Amelio, bunch of people.
Well, you're going to have to check it out. You guys are just going to have to go over and check it out. So I've been catching some of the clips on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Share.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's talk about Butter and how it all came together. Tell us about the session. Tell us about your baby.
Well, it was just, it was crazy. It all happened during COVID. Rob Grimaldi, who was signed to my publishing venture, 27 Music through Sony, sent me a song that Stephen Kirk had written, I think in 2018. And I just thought it was amazing. And the production was already there, and the melody for the chorus, I was like, this is absolutely like one of the best songs I've heard in a long time. So basically we went on and we were like, okay, we need to change the lyrics to make more sense for BTS. So we all sort of came together, and the drill. We did 50 plus co-writes or rewrites until we sort of really nailed down on it. But I think when we came up with the concept Butter, it just felt very like we had landed, which is a great feeling.
So there was like 50 rewrites. There was like a lot of rewrites.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and it was just it was such a crazy time in life, really, just because, obviously everything that BTS had been doing. And, obviously I had vocal produced Dynamite before that. So just to be part of their whole whirlwind, it was a cool moment. So
awesome. Well, congrats. That's super
Thank you.
cool. I want to touch on your publishing ventures. I know that you mentioned one of your other ventures, but give us the rundown. I know you just started a brand new one.
Yeah. So I had 27, which obviously, for people that don't necessarily know how that works, it's a venture within a major, and obviously it's nice because you get the support of a major publisher, but have like an indie sort of feeling in terms of, like me working like as a creative. But we had a couple at 27, for example, we had a couple of our own personal A&Rs that worked for the company. And so you get like almost a feeling of having an extra management wing. But for 27, we had Little Mix signed, and this producer, Mike Saunier, that's also still on 27, Cody Tarplay, who's still on 27, and then Alex Bilowitz, who was, that ended up being on Butter and Rob Grimaldi, which was cool because that's the whole point, again, of a venture, is sort of to use your own people and create songs within your mix, right? So that was a really fun thing. And then I decided to do my own publishing venture coming out of COVID with Warner Chappell. So 27 is still existing in terms of what was signed there, but now I started a company called Genesis Music at Warner, and it's just brand new, and it's been really exciting. So we have a couple people signed there so far, and to me, it's very much fun for it to be grassroots and really sign things that I'm so passionate about that I just, it's like, your goal as somebody who's working on another person's career, whether it be an artist or a songwriter, for me, is to like love their music as much as you'd love your own. Like, I can't sleep, I can't eat, like I'm constantly thinking about it. That's when you should sign something.
That's amazing. I was just going to ask, like, if there's anything specific that you're looking for when you're taking on a new signing. But I think you just answered it. You were like, once I'm obsessed with it and I can't stop thinking about it, that's when you know.
Well, I think I look for like something that I just know, like I don't have to explain to myself the reasons why this should be good. It just feels instinctual and authentic within their music. It's not like a math, right? At some point, like we know when we write a good song, whether it's going to end up being a hit, all the political stars align. We don't know that, but like in our guts as creatives, we know when we write a great song. We know when we hear a great artist. We know when you give a great vocal delivery, like, in your gut, right? It's like, because when you walk out of a session and you didn't do great that day, you also know. So It's like you have to learn to really do that gut check.
Yeah, totally. I was just going to touch really briefly on what your current self-care routine looks like. What's your like top 3 things that are like your must-haves for your self-care?
I mean, it's tough. I am so I've always been so driven by music as a healer that, like, obviously being around music, being able to have that in my career, as much as I should have more of an outlet, I feel like that is so healing, whether or not it's like listening or creating or any of those things. But I mean, in terms of just normal self-care, I think like it really depends. I love watching. I'm like such a Netflixer, like straight, like that really helps me like relax. Mm-hmm. And I really just like after a long day, just like turning off my brain and not like feeling like even going on like TikTok or things, that I don't like doing that because I feel like just my mind doesn't stop. So like watching a movie or a show really does that, or like having a glass of wine. Am I saying the most healthy? Like I'm going to the gym 2 hours. Like it's just like, but things that really turn me off, like I'm like, okay, I'm like turned off. I can fully just relax. Yeah, I think that. And like obviously being in Nashville has been really interesting for me because there's so much like open space and like land here, and like being outside, just like walking around or just being in like the openness and just feeling like no stress in that sense has been like recently like something that I've been doing a lot. to just kind of keep my mental in check.
I totally relate with that, with shows and stuff, because it is really hard as creatives to turn your brain off, especially someone like you who's wearing so many different hats and, juggling lots of things and passionate about each of these projects. The brain is always going. So it's like, what are those things that help you turn off the brain? So I'm
exactly.
What are they? What are the ones? Please, I need to be brain dead for like half an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you could go back in time to baby Jenna first starting out her career in music, what is one piece of advice you give her?
I'd say to not put so much pressure on myself, like just to let the music feel like, and just to know that it takes time, and not to feel like, and to have patience, and not to put so much pressure on yourself, and let your love for music and the creativity be the driving force, not the pressure to like impress people. How about that?
Yeah. I love that. It's perfect. I think mine would actually be the same. I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself in the very beginning, and I'm just like, that was not necessary at all. Like,
right. Yeah, just walk in your own light, I guess. Right. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Yay. Okay, cool. I love that. 'Cause I know I'm ready.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. For more self-care strategies, check out my book, Self-Care for the Creative. And if you're an up-and-coming artist, songwriter, or music producer, come join us at the Songwriter Series. It's an online platform that offers one-to-one music mentorship from hit songwriters. I also curate a quarterly music industry panel to help people break into the music industry and get in the mix. For more info on all my events, visit stephaniefriesel.com or just email me at info@stephaniefriesel.com. If you're loving the podcast, please like, share, subscribe, share it with a friend, leave us a review. Your support is super appreciated. And don't forget, self-care is always within reach, and your greatest masterpiece will always be you. 'Cause I know I'm ready.